It's always fun to talk to wrestlers, but honestly, I have a lot of fun talking to announcers, managers, and I don't feel like there's enough interviews when it comes to announcers and managers and play-by-play and commentary. And I feel like you guys on your end don't get as much recognition as you really probably should. So I really appreciate you doing this.
We really don't, because when we're doing our job at our best, we're invisible. The job is to not notice us until you're supposed to notice us, much like a good referee. If the referee's that great, you don't notice how great they're being. So that's the catch 22 of some of these ancillary jobs that we have.
Mm. Yeah, I get that. Um, you debuted in 2003 as a commentator, as an announcer. What was it like getting into the business back then? Was it different than it is now? How were you able to pull that off and get involved?
It's a completely different world back then than it is right now. We're talking about pre-social media, pre-YouTube. I came in right at the dying days of send a VHS tape in the mail,
Okay.
um, to get noticed and try to get a job. My beginnings, it was right place, right time. So much of what I've done has been timing.
Hmm.
I started attending shows as a fan, and as much as I'd already been bitten by the bug before that, that really was, icing on top of the cake. Like this is my way in. I don't know how, I don't know when. I really am not even sure doing what, but at some point, I need to be doing this, and this is my way in to do it. And it took me 4 months to figure it out, because I wound up basically bringing an event to my high school for a Spanish class fundraiser. And that was my first opportunity helping promote the show, push tickets, hang posters, all the grunt work nobody wants to do.
Hmm.
Um, but I did it, and we had 350 people strong there that night. That was my first taste of commentary, which seemed to work out okay long term.
Yeah.
But that night I was atrocious because I didn't know what I was doing. I was barely 17 years old, had never been in that spot to know what it felt like. So thankfully, I had, my first mentor by the name of Jeff Gorman to lead me and direct me and hold my hand figuratively through it. Um, and then once I did it, I could watch it back and recalibrate. And all right, okay, here's 10 things you did that sucked, but here's two things I did that were kind of okay and may, need a little bit of polish, but could be something. So I kept bugging and bothering whoever I could to get another opportunity. And, finally, 8 months later, they had an event coming up where none of the regular announcers were available. There was, I think, a wedding or two, and some job conflictions, a bunch of stuff going on at once, and that's how I got the chair for that night, and I've been going strong ever since because I put my heart and soul into that night, August 23rd, 2003. And even though I was very rough around the edges and very unpolished, um, you can't teach passion. And I brought every bit of passion that I had that night, and that was enough to, at least for the promoter Norm Connors, to see something in me that probably, admittedly, very few, if anybody else there saw, but it was in there, and he was smart enough to know that eh, this kid could be something.
Right. And obviously turned into be something. You've announced in God, dozens of promotions. Um, Back then, once you got your foot in the door, at that point in time, like you said, pre-social media, a lot of times nowadays a wrestler will get booked by just messaging the Facebook page or shooting an email or something like DMs or but back then, how did you go from getting booked from promotion to promotion back in the day? Like how were you able to pull that off?
It was a lot of email back then.
Okay.
Um, maybe occasionally, we didn't have the social media DMs, but we did have AOL Instant Messenger to
True.
network, and I made a couple of important contacts through there. But from day one, I just started. Well, not day one. It took me a while to kind of figure out the lay of the land. It took me a couple of years to realize, like, all right, this is cool, and I'm happy doing this. Um, but whatever's next is not going to come to me. I got to stay hungry and keep chasing it.
Hmm.
So it was setting these little short-term goals for myself. All right, how do I get booked out of state? And okay, now how do I get booked in Philly? Now how do I get booked and get flown in? How do I get booked on a card with wrestler X? How do I get to work with announcer Y? Just these little hurdles that I could jump. Um, there was nobody in that time period, especially in that time period, that was going to offer me a contract anytime soon. That was not going to be a viable short-term goal.
Hmm.
Um, but you're not going to climb to the top of a ladder in one leap. You're going to do it step by step by step. Um, so that was the process, and it was. I always say if you want to make it work, you'll find a way. And if you don't want to make it work, you'll find an excuse.
Yeah,
Uh, oh, it's too hard. I emailed the promoter and he ghosted me, and I'm just going to give up.
right.
Okay, you could do that, or you could follow up next week, and then if they tell you there's no spots, you can reach out again every 6 months because again, timing is so important in everything we do, and
Yeah.
so many circumstances that are completely out of your control lead into that decision. And sometimes those circumstances are out of the promoter's control too. I have been told no by people only for that answer to change in a month
Yeah.
or a year or a few years.
Hmm.
Um, Again, just keep yourself in the game. But I knew I needed to put my name out there. And at one point, when the light bulb went off, I sent the same email to I want to say 24 different wrestling bookers, promoters, important people
Hmm.
in the tri-state area. Just introducing myself. I'd love to send you a tape. I'd love to work together if there's any opportunities. I think out of those 24, 25, I think four wrote back to me. Which hey, this is applying for a job. It's to be
Hmm.
expected. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
Entertainment jobs are rejections occasionally interrupted by work. That's I'm not knocking that. That's par for the course, whether it should be or not. But that email is what started my relationship with JT Lightning, which is what got my foot in the door working in Cleveland, Ohio. Which to an extent I'm still doing today.
Hmm.
Um, that email got me introduced to the legendary Hall of Fame jack of all trades, Les Thatcher,
Oh,
which led to so many business opportunities there with him. Obviously, the most recent of which being releasing his Heartland tapes and the Brian Pillman Memorial Show.
nice.
So again, these are things I did in 2005, and I can tangibly give you something in 2024 that tells you I'm still reaping those benefits today. So it all goes back to um, wrestling as a giant, giant web of connectivity. And you just have to put yourself out there because you never, ever know what a little thing you do today is going to do for you in 3 years.
What was the because when you really first got started, it was very still recently post WCW, post ECW. There was one major player in town on the national level. What were the indies like at that time with your experiences? And were there a lot of Were there a lot of names out on the indies that weren't working in the WWF that were just kind of floundering around, working wherever they could? What were the indies like for you back then?
I think I was blessed to be a part of one of the true Renaissance eras of independent wrestling. You look at the names that were, maybe they had a few years of tenure in, but were really coming up and getting their names known at that point. Bryan Danielson, Samoa Joe, CM Punk, AJ Styles, Low Key, Christopher Daniels, guys like the Homicide, Amazing Red, these guys who had maybe a little bit of experience through a TNA or Ring of Honor that was just starting, but for all intents and purposes, they obviously weren't under full-time contract anywhere. They were independent guys, and right behind them, you had Jimmy Jacobs and Alex Shelley and a whole other crop of Jimmy Rave, all these guys, Roderick Strong coming along that were going to be nipping at their heels. So I was very, very fortunate to be a part of that in a context of talent and just being around hungry men and women that wanted to make it to the next level. The drawback of that, as you had mentioned, was that point in time was probably the smallest the wrestling business had ever been. There was only one company in the country offering full-time work. And that company had dropped down from its peak business. Um, and you have TNA is a baby, Ring of Honor is a baby, MLW is a baby. All these guys who would move on to be bigger and better. But at that point, they are just trying to make sure they can, keep the checkbook balance and stay afloat. So breaking in at that point was, to an extent, a little disconcerting to me because at that point, WWE was not hiring quote unquote wrestling people to be in announced positions. They were hiring people fresh out of college or from the sports world or whatever the case is. I think at that point, when I broke in, the last wrestling announcer that had been hired, and I'm not talking about an ex-wrestler like a Taz or somebody like that, but an
Right.
actual play-by-play guy would have been Kevin Kelly, and that would have been 1996, which would have been 7 or 8 years ago. So the job prospects there weren't great for me. I knew I was not a great candidate on paper for what they wanted at the time. So I always put my attitude and energies towards, well, I'm rooting for NWA TNA, I'm rooting for Ring of Honor. And thankfully I can sit here all these years later and say I've done work for both of those companies. Would have always have liked to have done more in my journey, but I'm very happy that I was able to, touch pavement in both of those organizations. But you have to believe in yourself and you have to believe in the products out there. Smart Mark Video was just becoming a bigger thing, and to a degree, I guess there was still tape trading because you had IWA Mid South and Chikara and CCW, and of course Ring of Honor, for Jersey All Pro for kind of the ardent diehard independent wrestling fans to seek out and find. And oh my God, Brian Danielson wrestled AJ Styles in front of 15 people in a barn in Indiana. Like, how crazy is that? But we're
Yeah.
gonna watch it, Just weird hidden gems like that seem bizarre today, knowing that they both wrestled in front of 80,000 people how many times.
Yeah.
Um, but that was what you did. And no instant streaming and no, fight TV platforms. You hoped the tape got out there. You hoped people saw it. If you're a
Right.
promoter, you hoped there was a back end to pay for all of these talents and flights. Um, so it was a lot more primitive, some ways better, some ways worse. I mean, the world evolves and you take the good and you take the bad. I think today the market's so crowded. I think the market's oversaturated to the point that you don't know what to seek out. You don't know. There's not those 3 or 4 destination promotions. There's 20 or 25 really quality companies with state-of-the-art production and top to bottom great talent.
Hmm.
And if you're a fan, how do you choose? If you're a promoter, how do you compete? Those are difficult questions that I think the answer is going to depend on who you ask. But that can be a plus and a negative depending on how you look at it. So it's ever evolving, and it's up to folks like us to evolve with it and be on top of whatever the next trend is.
Yeah, absolutely. You just talked about tapes and, finding the videos of, Danielson and Styles in front of 15 people and the IWAs. And I think people forget that there's still a plethora of videos that WWE doesn't own yet. And you're building one hell of a tape library right now. It's unreal. What made you want to get started doing that and building that? And what is your end goal with it?
I mean, honestly, at first, Pro Wrestling Library was simply a brand and an identity to be able to house all of my own projects
Okay.
because I had executive produced PWO Prime Wrestling TV in Ohio for 6 years. We did 191 episodes. I had booked and produced Premier Championship Wrestling in Cleveland after that, which was another 6 year run. We did even more live events than we did at the PWO era. I started doing original releases in 2013, like documentaries and compilations and biographies, and I catered it to a specific niche,
Mm-hmm.
something that was not being marketed to or adhered to in the wrestling landscape. I could, I don't want to say anybody could run a show. That's completely false. But anybody could market an event on a DVD or a tape or a stream.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, there's so much out there. What can I do that's different, that's not going to be dated? We could watch a wrestling show tonight and love it, but depending on what company it is, a week later, 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later, they've moved on. They've got new content, and the wheel keeps moving. I wanted to put out things that would be just as viable and interesting to somebody in 2024 as it would be in 2014. And, for the fan that wanted to think, we did the Montreal Theory, and we did, well, wait, what if Brett was secretly in on it? Let's turn this upside down, play conspiracy theory, and let's investigate this a little bit and have some fun with it. Um, for those that wanted to learn, I did Refereeing 101 with Jimmy Corderas, the first ever refereeing seminar that was ever filmed in the United States. For people that wanted to feel, I did Finding Zach Gowen, the life story of wrestling's first one-legged wrestler, who I still say is the best human interest story in pro wrestling. And the fact that he's not working for WWE today on a part-time schedule, doing bullying tours in high schools and doing children's hospitals and Make-A-Wish visits is insane to me. Zach is such a sweetheart. If you wanted to laugh, I did The Legend of Virgil, where we sat down and talked to Virgil, and he spun some of his tall tales, and we fact checked him, and we sat him behind. I made him set up his merchandise table in his apartment, and that was our set. Um, but I had all these ideas coming to me, and it's like, man, it'd be really cool if somebody did that. And then, well, wait a minute, I
Yeah.
can do that. Like I
Yes.
I know enough people in production, and I obviously can format a show or format a program. I can host it, obviously. So that the library kept building from there, and it turned into okay AJ Styles and okay Samoa Joe and okay all the Les Thatcher collections and
Mm-hmm.
Pillman Memorial Shows, and the more support these got and the more revenue they generated, the more I was able to allocate additional time to putting more out. And today I think I've got whatever 39 original titles on the market, not even counting the in-ring product that we put out. Um, and it's built into collaborations, and it's built into um, you know, working relationships with other libraries. And what I've been able to do the past 6 to 8 months, working with Savmar Entertainment and the Savoldi Wrestling Library, is take a lot of the classic footage they have from the 70s or 80s,
Mhm.
A lot of footage that Todd Okerlund has, Mean Gene's son, obviously, um, and put it in front of a different audience that had been able to see it. Todd's programs have been available on streaming. They've been available on pay-per-view. The Savoldis have a successful streaming network. But if you're of a certain age where you want to watch the Von Erich family, or you want to watch Harley Race, or you want to watch Andre the Giant, which will be our summer release, um, you're not looking for streaming on your computer primarily. That's an option, and it's a good option. It's a viable option. It's something I do. But my heart always goes to physical media, something you can have, you can hold. It's a
Mhm.
collector's item, and it's yours.
Yes.
People used to ask me when it was available as a standalone, why don't you have the WWE Network? Well, the answer is I already had the WWE Network on all of my shelves in discs
Yes.
and tapes. And, and
Yes.
and and the thing is if I subscribed to WWE Network and paid my $9.99, I'm not owning anything. I'm renting it. So they could take away anything they wanted from that network at any point,
Mhm.
or they could just decide, you know what, we're not doing it anymore. And all that $10 a month I'd invested for however many years, where does that go? That's
Yes.
I don't get that back, but now I've got no content. Here
Mhm.
I've got content. My private collection has, I don't want to put a percentage number on it, but the vast majority of the biggest events from WWE, WCW, ECW, working on the territories here and there, but like, TNA, so what I want to do with Pro Wrestling Library now is let's tell the stories and let's do the compilations now that there's a massive hole in that physical media market. They're getting phased out of Best Buy. They're getting phased out of
Mhm.
Target. They're getting phased out of Walmart. WWE is not even producing DVDs.
Yeah. Don't get me started with
So,
that.
yeah, so why can't I say, hey, here's a bunch of stuff that Von Erichs did in St. Louis that you probably have never seen before, and you're gonna love it. Here's a bunch of stuff Harley Race did, and it helps the viewer. It helps the Savoldi, Okerlund, whoever libraries, because it opens up another revenue stream to them. It opens up another revenue stream to me as the conduit that's making this happen. Literally everybody benefits.
Mhm.
So opening this door and allowing all this classic footage in, and just think of how many names out there we could do just in my head. I've thought in the next 18 months, I'd love to have full scale sets of Kevin Sullivan, of Terry Funk, of Randy Savage, and Jerry
Oh.
Lawler, and go on because there's so much out there. If you know where to look and you know what's within your legal boundaries,
Mhm.
but Dallas and Memphis and San Antonio and Florida, and there's, Global Wrestling Federation. There's so much stuff out there. Um, that maybe a fan isn't going to sit and watch every episode of, maybe isn't going to find on streaming and sit down at their desk at, 6 o'clock every day or whatever the time is. But if you say these 6 hours here are the best of your guy, they're going to jump all over it. And when we did Von Erich Dynasty last December, when the Iron Claw came out, um, top two fastest selling ever, right up there
Believe
with
that.
Pillman. And obviously a lot of that's timing, but a lot of that too is also the demand in the marketplace, because no one's ever did a Von Erich compilation that was framed as a happy story. We didn't talk about
True.
we didn't talk about how they died. We didn't talk about uh if Fritz is a good parent or not. We didn't talk about Mike's toxic shock. We talked about, here's why you fell in love with him. Here's a Freebirds match. Here's, you know, Kevin making his entrance in the sportatorium and people trying to rip his clothes off. Here's, Kerry wrestling the missing link in Hawaii. Here's challenging, Ric Flair for the world title. All this different stuff that made people appreciate the triumph of the Von Erichs and the rock star element of the Von Erichs.
Yes.
That's what we wanted to bring because the market already has been served the negative stories. But
Yeah.
let's give you some nooks and crannies you haven't seen in a while, if ever, and appreciate and understand why the Von Erichs were so adored and revered to begin with. Um, that's the goal with what we're doing now at ProWrestlingLibrary.com, which is the digital version of it, and links there that'll take you to Joe-Dombrowski.com, which has always been my DVD hub. Let's find that underserved part of the wrestling market, and let's give them some really cool stuff that's never been done, but I can't explain why it hasn't been done in the past 30
Right.
years.
Is there anything, just as a wrestling historian, videotape wise or show wise, that you stumbled upon that you're like, holy crap, like this is like we could get this? Like, what are some of your like your golden gooses that you've been able to secure and nail down and that you now have that you didn't think was a possibility?
The biggest one was the Pillman shows, because there had never been a wide scale release of the Brian Pillman Memorial events, to my knowledge, ever. If attended an independent show in Cincinnati, you could probably get the VHS tape off of a dirty table in the back of the building somewhere.
Right.
Um, but there was never, the only match that ever really escaped was Benoit versus Regal. And people had wound up seeing that because the match was so good. But no one had ever seen start to finish. Um, and when Les let me clean out his garage, and go through all the developmental tapes that he had, and hey, let's see if we can make a buck off of these, and maybe
Mhm.
find a few fans. John Cena, Jamie Noble, Mark Henry, Jimmy Yang, the Island Boys, who went on to be 3 Minute Warning, Rosie and
Jamal.
Jamal
Yeah.
Umaga,
Mm.
Shannon Moore, all the great cruiserweights that were down there, Spanky, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I found the Brian Pillman tapes in there. Like, Les, could we do something with this? What's the deal? And Les said basically that don't get your hopes up because the rights rest with Brian Sr.'s widow. And she is, for understandable and maybe slightly less than understandable reasons, both, she was not very communicative with anybody in the wrestling community.
Hmm.
And she's had a volatile life, and that's been profiled in Dark Side of the Ring. I won't need to get into that any further.
Right. Yeah.
But when Brian Jr. broke into the business and I started talking to him, and hey, Brian, running a show in Cleveland, and that's, a few hours from you near Cincinnati. Come make an appearance. Let's do some business together. I was able to sit Brian Jr. down, tell him my idea, and like, hey, Brian Jr., you take care of your mom. I'll take care of Les. Let's make some history. And lo and behold, 2021 was the very first ever widespread release. It broke every sales record. It gave me PTSD because here I am, one man doing a, 1-to-1 disc making operation, and I'm shipping for a solid 2 to 3 weeks, 40 to 50 units a day.
Wow.
Um, Good problem to have.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then when things settled down, uh, uh, and I love him, and that's going to be the most polarizing thing I say in this interview. But Jim Cornette plugged it on his podcast, and numbers shot straight up again. So to be able to be a part of bringing that to life and have my voice on these mythical shows that everyone had always heard about but never seen. What? WWF and WCW and ECW, same building, same show. What? Height of the Monday Night Wars. What? But it happened. Um, as far as what's next, to be determined, because the Savoldi storage facility still has a lot of things undiscovered and unlabeled. Um, And I have been in talks with a certain former WWF wrestler. And if I'm able to pull off what I want to pull off, I will be, with their permission, releasing footage the internet has been after for 29 years, but never seen. That's all I'll say till the right contracts are signed. But something was teased a long time ago, and the footage is 29 years old, and nobody's been able to make this logistically happen. I would like to. And someone's got to do it, so why not me? So stay tuned. But I think so many of those rare, like we've got the Tom McGee match, we've got the last battle at Atlanta. Um, I think the next Holy Grail is something that nobody knows exists until it gets found.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes the search so fun. And that's why I'm going to keep digging out there. And if it's something I don't have rights to that no one else has claimed, it'll probably wind up on my YouTube channel. So you always keep an eye on that too, because if I don't feel brave enough to sell it, I'll probably post it there.
It took me years, I mean years, just within the last couple of years to get on board with streaming because I'm old school. Like I like having the physical copy, and plus, like I don't trust the internet and digital. What happens if, like you said, WWE takes it off the network, or the rights expire or go to someone else, or God forbid, the internet crashes and everything you have is digital and you can't watch it then. I will only buy a movie like I'll only buy a digital copy if it's with the physical like movie because if it goes away, I still want to be able to watch my movie or my DVD. So like thank God you're doing physical as well because it's such a lost art. Like it just you can't beat the feel and the look and the presentation and the packaging of the physical DVD. It's just you can't beat it. It it's so much better.
What was really unique to me is that year over year, I started to notice my DVD sales dropping and my digital sales climbing. And I just felt like, all right, this is the change. This is the transfer over. There's nothing I can do. Just hang on
Hmm.
for the ride. Um, then when I did Pillman, and to a lesser extent the three Heartland volumes, but I mean same family. That trend started to reverse. And at this point, 2024, um, I would say month over month, not counting like the massive spikes when I release something, but month over
Right.
month, DVD sales are as strong or stronger than they've ever been for me. And digital sales are just okay. And I think that speaks to the fact that I'm attracting a certain type of fan now. And they aren't just coming for, oh, I heard about this Montreal theory. I want to check it out. It's, I heard the kind of things here, and I want to be a part of this because I'm getting more. I just had to switch over my entire payment processing on my website to a shopping cart rather than just buying it now because I would just sell one item at a time for 10 years. But now
Huh.
people are wanting to buy two, three, four, five things at once because um, I have so many things that are appealing and attractive to the same type of fan. So it's still out there. Those type of fans are still out there. I don't think they're going
Hmm.
anywhere anytime soon. And I think streaming as a whole is very possible that bubble bursts because now, like, how many streaming platforms do you need to be a part of to watch everything you want? Well, this movie's on Netflix, but this series just premiered on Paramount, and then this is over here on Max, and then you know, eventually you're going to add all this together, and it's just going to be the same price as cable if it's not already. So is it really easier? Is it really more convenient if you have to subscribe to seven different places and pay a little bit to seven different places instead of paying a lot to one place and just not have to think about it?
Hmm.
So as that comes to, and that changes and evolves, again, not something I necessarily have to worry about. If I have to, adjust what I do from a digital standpoint, I will. I already had to in Pivot Share went out of business, but I can always go to an event with a table of DVDs. I can always, list a DVD on eBay. I can always mail a package. That's tried and true, and it's not going to change anytime soon. And as long as people keep supporting and keep buying, I'm going to keep producing and give the people what they want.
Yeah, and as somebody who really values the history of professional wrestling, I love how MLW runs and in some very historic, iconic professional wrestling buildings. Obviously the 2300 arena, but Battle Riot was just at center stage, which is a WCW kid. Like, I had to tune in and watch that pay-per-view because I grew up on WCW, and that was amazing for somebody like you who values the history of wrestling. How special is it for you to be able to call matches in some of these venues?
I think, well, I mean, first, not to correct you on your show, but the coolest thing about Battle Riot is that it wasn't a pay-per-view. It was free on YouTube
That's
for everybody.
true. It was YouTube. Yes.
And
True.
MLW's getting into the YouTube Pass now, where I think
Yeah.
you can be a premium subscriber and just binge watch the entire history, which I think
Mhm.
is really cool too. Because so many great talents have come through there. Not just the 3 years I've been there, but dating back to 2002. Um,
Mhm.
History is not lost on me for sure. The first time I stepped into the ECW arena, um, I was in awe. Like, and yeah, it's been remodeled and renovated a lot of times, and sometimes you got to look hard for some of the resemblance, but
Mhm.
just knowing the history in that building, knowing who has passed through there and the moments that have passed through there, means a lot. And I believe I've been in the ECW arena for more different promotions than any other building in the world. That's cool. Um, Center stage up until last weekend, I'd only ever, I think, done 2 matches in for Future of Honor back in the Ring of Honor
Wow.
days. So it was special to be in the lead chair. It was special to be the voice of one of MLW's signature events. Um, Battle Riot's always one of my favorite events to begin with, but you add that history, you add the fact that we honored Gary Juster in that building, which will air in a couple weeks. You add in so many Atlanta-centric names that were in Battle Riot, Ernest Cap Miller and Scotty Riggs, and the fact that I got to call a moonsault from my boy Jimmy Yang in that building means a lot to me. Like, I've worked with Jimmy Wang Yang, Redneck Cowboy, and I have, voiced decades after the fact, 2001, 19, 20-year-old developmental Jimmy Yang. But to be able to um, see the Jimmy Yang I grew up loving in front of me. We're not two-stepping and yeehaw and all of that
Yeah.
gimmicky stuff. And I get it. People dig it, and it makes money. It sells merch. I'm not knocking it. But the reason I love Jimmy Yang is Young Dragons. It's
Yes.
pinning AJ Styles the first TNA pay-per-view, first match of TNA. It's Akio versus Paul London on Velocity. Like, Jimmy Yang is one of the most underrated dudes. And the fact I think he's 41 or 42 right now. Look up the moonsault he did on that show because it's top three in the business today as far as optics.
Mhm.
Um, so that means a lot to me because I can go back and watch footage of a Saturday night taping at Center Stage or an old Jim Crockett TV from Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium or Dorton Arena in Raleigh, knowing I've worked those buildings. And of course, the ECW Arena, the Golden Dome of Monaca, I've worked, which was at one point ECW's biggest house ever for November to Remember 1997. So to be able to look, go, oh yeah, there's the balcony, and oh, this is the entranceway, and this is what they use today, and be able to connect myself to something I watched as a kid, and to me was larger than life. To me, it was saucerized to all of this. But now to
Hmm.
be able to have a personal effect to all of it, um, still kind of blows my mind because imposter syndrome is real. And sometimes we're so deep in wrestling that we don't take a step back and realize, like, holy crap, like, we're living our dream. And yeah, the road trips are long and annoying, and promoters can be difficult, and sleep schedule and diets are hard, and all the different things you're going to complain about every day. But you go back and tell 6-year-old you, 10-year-old you what you're doing now, how pumped would they be?
Yeah.
Like, even if you were just doing it, like when I was a kid, um, I was 12 years old, and on every Saturday night they had a block of pro wrestling on WPTT channel 22, and it was ECW at 11 p.m. It was WWF Shotgun Saturday night at midnight, and it was PWX, which was a local company here in Pittsburgh, at 1 a.m. And
Oh,
to me as a kid, I don't understand the different pay scales of these companies. I don't understand the budgets of these companies. Obviously, they look different, and obviously, one is the biggest, and one is the medium, and one is this. But to me, it's all on TV, and it's all the same channel, and everything is larger than life to me. So if you would have told um 11, 12-year-old me that one day you'd have a 2, 3 year run as the voice of this PWX thing years later, I would have been elated, over the moon. Um, and by the time I got there, and not a knock to anybody that was working there at the time, but by the time I got there, um, it probably wasn't in the top 3 biggest places I was working. Um, that just shows you how your perspective is different as
hmm.
a kid versus an adult. So even if I had done a tenth of the things I've done, if young me would know that, holy crap, how validating would that be? Um, that is so cool, you know? So to be able to connect what I watched then to what I do now, whether it's a promotion or a venue or a wrestler, um, it's very important to take a step back and process that and let it blow your mind, because you earn that opportunity and you should be able to enjoy it.
Absolutely. There's been multiple things I've been able to do just over the last year, even having done this for 13 years, where I'm just sitting there and just one in particular sitting in a press conference, just looking down and just like, how how is this possible? Like, there's no way. Like, you have to be able to sit back and appreciate where you are and how far you've come. I feel like otherwise, like, what's the point? Um, and
And
one
you
thing
burn
I,
yourself out too. That's the other important thing. You need to give yourself a chance to get those flowers with each little individual goal, so you can appreciate that
mm,
and keep on going. Because there are so many people I talk to, and occasionally one of them will say, "I got to get signed. I got to get signed. I got to get signed." Like, bro, you're missing the point,
yeah,
because you are so wrapped up in that you're not even recognizing the cool things you're doing now, because you're so negative because you don't have a contract.
mhm,
And so many people are conditioned that contract means making it.
yeah,
Um, Contract doesn't mean making it. Happiness means making it. Contract
yes,
helps you get there, and it depends on the type of contract and with which company, and of the tenure and the terms and the limitations and the restrictions, and all that stuff goes
mhm,
into it. But you can't just sign the first piece of paper in front of you and say, "Yep, I made it. I can stop trying." That's not
exactly.
what this is. When you get a contract, it gets tougher. When you have a contract, there are sometimes are restrictions,
Hmm.
as far as where you can work, or you're running somebody else's playbook. So
Yeah,
enjoy the freedom while you have it, because one day you could be in an exclusive deal with a huge company making 6 figures and be absolutely miserable because you're creatively bankrupt.
yeah,
And It's not the destination, it's the journey. That's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. Um, because if you're only worried about the finish line, if you're going to get validation from those 4 seconds of signing your name on the contract, then what about the rest of the 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm. And MLW is one of the promotion that's really proving like you don't have to have a six-figure contract with, certain places to make it and enjoy what you're doing and be a big deal. And there's a couple wrestlers on the indies right now who prove that you can make more money, have more fun, and be happier without those big giant contracts because those aren't everything. And MLW right now, you guys are also proving that it's not necessarily somewhere where you make your career, which you get discovered there, but it's also now a place where a lot of people want to go work when they've been certain places. You're seeing a lot of people pop up that are making a point to go to MLW, and you guys have become a major player over the last 3 years for sure, if not more, in the wrestling world. You guys are on a completely different level. Um, how much fun has it been your run these 3 years with MLW, seeing this company grow at the rapid rate that it has? Like, you're on
Well,
fire.
I mean, the great thing too is it's still growing. And when I came in 2021, MLW, just like the rest of the world, was still limping their way out of the pandemic. And things were growing, but very slowly and very cautiously because you didn't know what the future would hold. You didn't know if there would be another wave of COVID. You didn't know if there would be long-term economic, slumps and recessions and depressions and all these things that people feared. And, obviously, you know, uh, 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 the world was changed in a lot of negative ways, and some of them unfortunately permanently, and thankfully some not. But um, when I came in, uh, MLW was just starting to get back on their feet, doing a little bit of touring, um, but most of the events in Philadelphia, especially over the past couple of years. Um, but you look at how that entire company, Major League Wrestling, has hit an upswing in 2024. And you can point to a lot of different people, whether it's the championship run of Satoshi Kojima, whether it's the influx of so many great talents from Japan and Mexico, whether it's the run that Alex Kane has been on, the acquisition of Matt Riddle, how many free agents have been in and out from, Matt Cardona to the Sammy Callahans to now Minoru Suzuki revealing himself
Yeah.
as a member of Contra. Um, it is so unpredictable because there's such a turnover in talent. You never know who's going to show up one event to the next. It's not like, well, here's our 50 guys. They all have 5-year contracts, and it's these same guys intermixed. It's not. Um, you can use whatever cliche or phrase you want about, opening doors or anything of that nature. But the bottom line is, um, people want to come to MLW because of the level of talent there, because of the level of production there, because of the amount of eyeballs that are going to be on it. And if you want to get noticed or you want to hit the next step of your career, um, that's a great place to do it. And you look at some of these young talents coming up, like Brett Ryan Gosselin, who has all the tools to be an absolute megastar. You look at Akira, who has sacrificed so much of his body. And in some ways, he's the anti-Goslin, like
Yeah.
Goslin's the prim and perfect pretty boy, and Akira's the pretty boy that somehow got scars all over him, and just doesn't give a damn. But like you look at those guys coming into their own, and the veterans they have to work with and learn from, and the legends that come in and out, and MLW's been a great place for me to learn how to do television on a higher level than I've ever had a chance to do it or would have a chance to do it independently. Because regardless of If you're an MLW diehard or an MLW critic, regardless of what you want to say about anything like that, this is big boy TV. You know, there is a lot of traffic to direct. There's a lot to get in and out of. There's a lot more for me to do than calling a match for 8 minutes, which would be the independents. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to tell the story of the match. I'm going to call what I see. I'm going to sprinkle in whatever anecdotes I can, and we're off to the next thing. But MLW, it's so busy in a good way because there's sponsors and there's ticket on sales and there's still to come later tonight and there's fight calendars and uh so much that needs to be addressed to keep the train on the tracks and keep the viewer engaged. I have a chance to do that, to learn, to work with a couple of great TV savvy people in my run up to where I am now. Speaking of Rich Bocchini and Matt Stryker, as I was kind of, easing my way into the lead chair. And I still have the freedom to do my own projects. I still have the freedom to do my independent bookings. I still have the freedom to do my stuff in Mexico. And it really is the best of both worlds. I always wanted to be able to tell stories and do episodic television at a high level because that's where I thrive. I could tell you what you're looking at, and that's great, but I would rather tell you why it's happening and what the object to be gained is from it and how we got here and where we're going. Um, to me, that's a great that's the mark of a great commentator. And somebody gave me a great compliment a couple days ago when he told me that he's been meaning to check out MLW for the longest time. He'd seen maybe bits and pieces here and there, but what convinced him, there were a couple things that convinced him to check out Battle Riot. I know one of them was Chris Danger, because this gentleman happens to be in the gaming community. And he said that the whole time he watched Battle Riot 6, he never felt lost or confused
Yeah.
because I was there to steer things in the right direction and tell this fan where we are, what's happening, and why. And that's the best compliment I could receive, because every event I do, whether it's Major League Wrestling or whether it's back in a barn with 15 people, it's somebody's first independent wrestling event. And it's all of our jobs, but especially my job, if you're watching, on a stream or disc or anything, to give you every reason possible to want to come back. And if I can get you sucked in to the personalities and the rivalries and what's going on and make you think to yourself, I got to see what happens next. Mission accomplished. And MLW's been doing that a lot this year because I believe we have come close to, if not sold out, every event but one this year, something like that. We're on a hot streak right now. And I know Battle Riot was sold out. I know tickets are moving fast for Tampa in July, back in New York in August. We're back on the road full time. It feels great. It really rejuvenates the crowd because they haven't seen us in a long time,
Yeah.
and they're just great wrestling cities too. So I couldn't be happier with MLW and what they've been providing for me and providing for the audience. And I'm just doing my part to make sure I can keep up and prove my value and prove my worth to anybody that tunes in to show, this is the place to be.
Can you tell me a couple things that you're the day of a show as the lead commentator, um, what are a couple, did I lose you?
I'm still here.
Okay. What are a couple things during the day of a show as the lead commentator that maybe fans may not realize that are part of your day leading up to bell time that you do during the day to get ready for the show, whether it be talking to talent or anything along those lines that maybe fans don't realize is a thing for you?
A lot of talking to talent for sure. I've always told people this is a collaborative effort. This is, at least in respects of what I do, this is a team effort. because I'm here to enhance you guys. I'm not here to enhance myself. I'm not here to work on my stand-up comedy routine. I'm not here to pop the boys, as they say. I am here to enhance whatever's going on in that ring in front of me. And if a wrestler has a new hold or a new move, or well, tonight I think I'm going to focus on working the back, and I'm gonna really work over their back because I'm going to set up for this Boston Crab I'm working on. Whatever the case is, I want to get inside the mind of the talent. Again, it's not just what, but it's why, how, and for what purpose. So that's a big thing for me. I also tried to watch the previous event or events. Probably not day of, more realistically night before, but I want that fresh in my mind. I want to know, definitively, this is where we've been, and here's the next chapter of that. And that helps me be able to connect that and be able to, if there's a little bit of minutia that maybe a fan would have forgotten or maybe a fan would have missed, I can be right there with that. It's pages of notes. I try to have at least a half a page of notes for every match. Um, and it's just one of those things where, um, you know, uh, 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 whether it's a move name, whether it's a statistic from college, whether it's anything like that, um, I want to have that if it's pertinent, if it's prevalent.
Hmm.
Um, and part of that too, it's also talking and interacting with your obviously the color analyst, having a rapport with him, having a comfort level between the two of you, because you're going to be bouncing off of each other and working together. So it's a lot more uh, stressful than it feels, than it sounds, because if you're live, um, that takes even more notes because I need to know on my feet. All right, this interview is scheduled, or we're cutting to this package to show the history of this feud before this next match. There's a lot more moving parts that if I am a deer in headlights and I'm lost, um, I'll be okay because there's enough of a support system around me and I'm working with nothing but professionals. But if I miss a half step, I'll know, and chances are the audience will be able to tell that too. So, just being meticulous and trying to be the perfectionist that I can be, or as close to it as I can be, because every broadcast can be your best broadcast, and you're only as good as your most recent one.
Sure. There's so many people on the roster that are up and comers, but also people that it's loaded with people that stand out. And obviously, some of the ones that stood out to me when I first watched was Janai Kai, Akira, Ricky Shane Page, Mads Kruger. So many people on that roster that stand out, but there's so much of a diversity of matches on these shows and cards. But matches that stand out to me recently would be the match between Ricky Shane Page and Akira at Kings of Colosseum, the Falls Count Anywhere match between Justice and Kruger. Are those matches stressful for you to call when they're doing things like that in the match, or are they easy for you to call?
Depends how close they are to me. That depends.
Yeah.
I still have somewhere in this office a format sheet covered in Mance Warner's blood that he had. He needed to wipe his eyes clean, and that happened to be the closest thing to him at the time.
Oh,
Um,
man.
but certainly watching that, you hold your breath a little bit because you don't know. And as much safety protocol as the company takes and as well trained as the athletes are when you're dealing with barbed wire and thumbtacks and glass and balconies and all this type of thing. No one ever truly knows. And I've known Matthew Justice for 17, 18 years now. seen him do some crazy stuff. I know how he thinks. I know how he operates. Um, that's just him. He gets a rush doing stuff like that. I know Akira now, you know.
Crazy.
Uh it's what he loves. I know Ricky Shane Page. All these guys are so passionate about what they do, and whether you're influenced by death matches or ECW or FMW, whatever the case is, that bleeds through in who and what they are. And as long as they can do it without a serious long-term injury, um, to them or myself, um, play ball. I mean, I'm not going to get in Matthew Justice's face and tell him no, because that'll be the last thing I do.
Yeah.
Um, but it's I've seen some crazy things. I've seen Abyss choke slam through flaming tables. I have seen people diving off of cages, and obviously in MLW we've seen people diving off of war chambers, and just
Yeah.
how that violence has escalated. And that's the nature of the beast. That's the era that we're in today, better or worse. But I love that they put all of themselves out there. They don't hold back. They're not showing up for a paycheck. They're showing up to prove to you how good they are. And they're going to use this platform for everything they can. So,
Yeah.
as long as you can pay your bills and enjoy your family and enjoy your quality of life, um, have fun out there. Just try not to bleed on me.
Finally, Joe, I over 20 years in the business, 2 decades, and still going strong, no end in sight. What stands out to you about your career, and what are you the most proud of at this point in your career with as long as you've been in the business for?
At this point, I'm most proud of the journey, as much as that might be a cliche or feel like an easy answer. Um,
Well,
I think my overall body of work speaks more than any, one or two things. Um, I made it to Ring of Honor, I made it to TNA, I made it to MLW, I made it to Europe and Mexico with AAA, doing Triple Manias, and I worked in the Middle East, and the amount of people I grew up, looking up to and idolizing, I've been able to work with. I'm just happy if 5 seconds from now, the entire wrestling business shut down, and it's time to call it a run, I could look back and know that I gave it all I had in those particular moments to the best of my abilities at the time. Um, but I also know I've been able to grow because of wrestling. I've been able to mature. I've been able to evolve. I've been able to look after my mental health. I've been able to recognize what's important in the world. Um, wrestling as a way of both making you grow up and keeping you young, I feel like at the same time. At least
yeah.
for
Yeah.
me. I don't
Yes.
know. Maybe
Yes.
others go too far in one direction or the other, but like in my head I'm still 22,
Yeah.
and I'm still just in awe if Kevin Sullivan walks into a room, or um but at the same time, like, mentally I feel the years on me. Mentally, like, I'm hardened to this, and I'm the weathered veteran now, and it's like, yeah, this business has done so much to me. Like, what's left,
Yeah.
Um, but I just look at the fact I've been able to live a very fortunate life for the past 21 and a half years. I've been able to grow in this business, and really, for the most part, live life on my terms.
Mm.
And it may be terms that the layman doesn't fully understand. The type of person that's married before they're 25, and they have their 2.5 children, and they have the secure bank job, and they have the white picket fence outside their house, and they tend to their garden every Sunday. Like, those type of people probably don't understand my life, which is okay because I don't understand theirs. That never appealed to me. Um, but the fact I was able to chase this crazy, stupid, weird dream and get as far as I have, to me, it's a testament. Just going back to, if you want it, you'll find a way. Because I
Mhm.
really did not have a lot going for me when I was 17, except I wanted it that bad, and I made it work. I'm not rich. I haven't had the easiest road. I'm not calling myself a role model, but I made it work for me, and I truly feel that the best is still yet to come.
And one thing I will say about you is you have become one of the most well-known, most well-recognized, and honestly, most iconic play-by-play announcers in all of professional wrestling. You didn't have to go to the very top promotion to do it. You were able to do it on your terms, your way, and work in still some of the absolute best promotions like MLW and still make one hell of a name for yourself, one hell of a career. And fans everywhere know who you are. And you were able to do it your way.
I
Like that's,
appreciate that. I appreciate
yeah.
it. My goal now is to be my generation's Jeff Jarrett, where I just show up in the most random, unexpected places at any given time. And so far, I think I'm doing okay. Um, so we'll see what's next.